I have, over the years, for whatever reason, invited people, knowingly and unknowingly, to kind of march into my world with any advice they might have for me as I go through ministry. As a friend of mine said when I came out of school, or when I misbehave, "You are just a little minister, don't forget that." Keeps you humble. And so in that kind of context, don't you know, I got it in email form, but I also read Science of Mind magazine on a regular basis. A friend of mine sent this to me, and it's entitled, "Manage Your Disposition." It can be tempting to be swept away by a bad mood. It sometimes feels as if our feelings are feeling us, rather than the other way around. However, it is always up to us to choose how we feel in any moment. As you let go of negative energy you're holding, you can allow positive feelings to wash over you and feel your greater connection to spirit. I manage my disposition and I choose to be happy. And this was sent to me as my friends, and they're wonderful friends, will find that from time to time that when I don't manage my disposition, I'm a little minister, and I'm operating under self, little self. So I have the luxury, the great gift of people reminding me. It's as we say, our thoughts are prayers. If you manage your disposition, if you change your thinking, you'll change your disposition, and you can do it in a nanosecond if you choose to. If you choose to. And while that doesn't directly have anything to do with what I'm going to speak with you and what we're going to co-create here this morning, it does segue nicely into our understanding that we can choose, absolutely positively choose, to be in our world the way that we can be, could be, ultimately, living the ultimate possibility of who we are, the promise, the purpose. It's our choice. Or not, as I'm fond of saying. What we're going to be working with this morning is the second of the 4 agreements on this small volume, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And the second agreement is, after the first one, which is be impeccable with your word, obviously, number 2, Sandy, is don't take anything personally. I don't know about you, but that's a real challenge. I can practice being impeccable with my word, but this whole don't take it personally, and he goes a step further. He says, don't take anything personally. Well, I don't know about you, but as a child and as a teenager and as a young adult, and even now sometimes as a mature, older adult, I can take things really personally on a given day and a good hour. I can kind of maybe back away from how hard I took it initially. But what he is saying is we make agreements with ourselves, and this is the kind of premise, one of the premises for this book. We make agreements with ourselves about how we're going to believe life, how we're going to live life, and how we're going to be life. And these agreements can be unconscious agreements sometimes, or they can be conscious. And we start making these agreements when we're very small. We make them in order to maybe survive. That's a poor word in our family of origin. We learn how the rules are, let's put it that way. Every family has its culture. Every family has a way of being, and we as children are taught that way of being in that family system. Then we get older and we're taught another way of being in addition to that, about which we make agreements as we move along in our culture, in our world, in our business, in our work, in our creativity. Some of those agreements are with us for life, and some of those agreements don't serve us at all anymore. But we haven't found a way to unload them. We walk around with those agreements like we have a huge briefcase just filled up with all the files we need to carry around that we made, contracts we made with ourselves and with our world. And what Don Miguel is saying is we need to review those contracts, those agreements. We need to take an inventory, if you will. What is it we have agreed to in life? And one of the agreements of the four, in all four, he said, of them that he's talked about, and they are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. He said if you can just agree and practice, make it a habit of all of those four, all the rest of your little tiny, teeny agreements, they don't matter. You don't need them. So the book is based on understanding these four very big time agreements. With being impeccable with the word, we spoke last week about how the word, as we know it, is the word of God. When we speak the word, we should also be mindful of how we speak the word. And to be impeccable with our word. Impeccable means without sin. So when we are impeccable with our word, we don't speak to destroy. We speak to build up. And one of the chief ways that we destroy is through gossip. And gossip is one of those slippery slope things, as I call it. We are sometimes way into gossip long before we ever labeled it gossip. We're just there. Did you see what she did? Oh, get a load of what he's got on. It's gossip, plain and simple. There's no good to it. It's making you feel okay for whatever reason. That's your issue and mine too. With being impeccable with your word, we can at least bring that one forward and think about it and work on it. We can say, whoops, I need to think before I speak. Any of you hear that from Mom? I certainly did. I didn't do it always. To this day, I throw out what I call New York Minute zingers and wish like heck I could just bring it back and that I had thought before I'd spoken. We can practice that, however, and that's number one agreement. Number two takes a little bit more out of the hide as we practice it, when we say don't take anything personally. Now, the author says the reason that we take things personally is that we have somehow agreed to what the person has said about us. Okay, you can swallow now, because sometimes that can get stuck right here. But they called me stupid, and I'm not stupid. The author's premise is, on some level, you agreed with what that person said. What, you say? I do not agree with that. Yes, his thought is this, and just hang with me here in this, is that if you are personally hurt by that, you have allowed that, and he calls it poison, to come in and rest in your soul. Because there's some part of you that agrees with that statement. And I'll read what he says. You take it personally because you agree with whatever was said. As soon as you agree, the poison goes through you and you are trapped in what he calls the dream of hell. What causes you to be trapped is what we call personal importance. And this is the part of note, whether you agree with dream states or hell states or whatever. Personal importance, or taking things personally, is the maximum expression of selfishness because we make the assumption that everything is about me. He's asking you to flip it on its ear. It isn't about you at all. It's about the person that spoke the words of destruction, who was not impeccable with their words. It was about them, not about you. Oh, but you say, he said it about me. Yes, and the agreement you can now learn to make is, it doesn't have anything to do with me. It's about the person who said it. That person has some part of them that is not healed and is not whole, and has decided to let their poison fly with the rest of the world, and you may be standing right in the way of that ball coming at you. And when we take it personally, we have said, oh, I'll accept that poison. I'll take that on. And we never stop to think that it really isn't about us, because we're all very invested in our own personal importance. We do, on many levels, make agreements that reinforce it's all about me. We know that the world, and the world is right here, views itself and the rest of the world in a very distinct individualized expression. And it's never, ever the same. It is not the same. Oh, but you say, I can agree with Molly. Molly said this, and I agree with that opinion. Yes, you may agree with the opinion, but remember, that's all it is. It's an opinion. It's not a truth. You agree because on some level, you've made an agreement that, yes, I like what Molly said. And you can stand there because that feels pretty good. When we like someone, we like something they've said. It's when we don't like something that we start to separate. And how do we separate? We don't consider the other person because we're hurt, we're angry, and we're upset. And it's all about me. And we revert to that. And that, as we learned from Eye of the Storm, is when we separate from the God of our being. We no longer see the other person as representative of the Christ in each of us. We see them as an enemy. I know many of us don't like that term, enemy, but we see a separation. What we see is them and me. And that is separation. That is not connection. That is not affirming living oneness with God. So what this agreement asks is that you make it a habit when something or someone, or, oh, by the way, take a look, when you say something nasty about yourself or destructive about yourself, which I find, frankly, most people do a lot more than they do to hurt anybody else. They're very difficult on themselves. Watch and see. Are you taking it personally? Are you making new agreements that are not constructive? When we take things personally, we automatically say, it's about me and I'm standing apart and away from you. On some level, you have made an agreement. And that agreement is, maybe there's some truth to what they're saying. Wow. You see how the thinking is all about me. It doesn't take into consideration that the other person is coming from a place possibly of woundedness. Now, Miguel takes it a step even further, which is a little harder to swallow. He says, when I say don't take anything personally, I mean anything. I mean even the good. You may tell me that you like me very, very much, but I don't care, because I'm not taking it personally. You see how the truth stands in that? You see how the line runs? And we don't like that. I don't like that. Heck, I'm going to compliment the heck out of people. I think that's a good thing. His point is, if you learn not to take anything personally, the good, or quote, the less than good, then you are your own person. You live in your own truth. You don't need to have anybody tell you how good you are. You know how good you are. It's a litmus test. Do you know how good you are? Do you know how wonderful you are? Do you know you are a gift? And sometimes we forget that. And it makes us feel good when people say nice things about us. But what he is saying, take it deeper. He's not saying don't compliment someone, don't take something and say how lovely you are. He's saying take it, receive it, and move on. Do not take it personally. Do not make it part of who you are, because it's not part of who you are. It's who that person sees you are. But it has nothing to do with you and the truth of who you are. If you can get deeper into that agreement, if you can take it a higher step in consciousness, if you can expand your awareness, you will find on some level that resonates with you. Some, like myself, I struggled with this one. I think I still do struggle with it. However, I can see the value in it. I can see the value in always remembering my center. Always, always, even when I forget, remember to come back to God. God is my truth. God is I am. Thank you very much for your lovely things you say. No, thank you very much for the ugly things you say. I'm not taking either one personally because I know who I am. And I stand in that truth. I'm confident in it. And I'm anxiously waiting to share my good with the world. It's a very special agreement you can make with yourself. And it takes practice and it takes time. But here's what he says. Miguel, he's talking to himself, like I do. What you are saying is hurting me. But it is not what I'm saying that's hurting you. It is that you have wounds that I touch by what I have said. You are hurting yourself. Oh, say it ain't so. I don't like that. Chew on it, even if you don't like it. Just take it in for a minute. He goes on to say, if you live without fear, because that's what it is when we take things personally, we are in a state of fear. If you can live without fear, if you love, there is no place for any of those emotions. When everything around you is great, everything makes you happy. You are loving everything that is around you because you are loving yourself. Because you like the way you are, because you are content with you, because you are happy with your life. And he calls life a movie. And he says when we're happy with our movie, our world expands. Our movie gets bigger because we are happy. And we bring that happiness to other people. And we don't take negativity personally. Now, try that on in an even larger size in our world today. Try that on when you turn on the television. And each hour there seems to be one more story of negativity. You are actually taking that personally. You have made an agreement to take that on. And often we take on those agreements out of a sense of self-righteousness, or that's what we call it. I am right and they are wrong. It is in the very I am right and they are wrong, we have separation. And we are taking things very personally. I'm just throwing that out there for you to consider. We are in turbulent times. We are in the best of times. We are in the worst of times, but we are the appropriate people for those times if we practice what we say we are and who we say we are. And this takes me right back to manage your disposition. You have to trust yourself and choose to believe or not to believe what someone says to you. When we really see other people as they are, without taking it personally, we can never be hurt by what they say or do. And he goes on to say, a lot of folks, my mother used to call it a fib. My grandma called it a white lie. In fact, a lie is a lie is a lie, however you cut it. And many of us have lied in our lives. I have. And why do we do that? He puts it like this. We sometimes lie because we're afraid someone will find out just who we are and that we're not perfect. Where did that come from? We talk all the time about being whole and perfect and one. It comes from not truly believing that. It comes from a gap, from an agreement, from a prior life, if you will. An agreement from when we were younger, older, who knows when, that says, I guess I'm just not as good as, I guess I just don't feel that way. Really. And now you've taken on that agreement. You've taken on that garbage. You have literally taken garbage in that says you're not whole and you're not perfect. Think about that. Think about that. Don't accept that is what the author is saying. Don't make that kind of agreement. And don't take anything personally. And the benefit for that, as we like to say in our practical Christianity, is the freedom of just being yourself. without any kind of hiding, without any kind of making it up as we go along so no one will find out. If you can find your own way of not taking anything personally, think about it. You will move through life with grace and with ease. Now, some of you are sitting there, I can feel it, and say, you think so? Some folks aren't going to like that. Yeah, now you're taking it personally. So what? Do you get it? Yeah, I see some of you. It's a complete circle. Don't take anything personally. When we take things personally, we're also getting into somebody else's business. We've allowed that person's business to be ours. And not only that, but to poison our well. When we don't do that, we are free to be in the truth of who we are, one with the one. And that, my friends, is an enormous gift. You can say, I love you, without fear of being ridiculed or rejected. You can ask for what you need. You can say yes, or you can say no. Whatever you choose without guilt or self-judgment, you can choose to follow your heart always. And then he says you can be in the middle of hell and still experience inner peace and happiness. Gary Simmons called it being in the eye of the storm. You can stay in your state of bliss, and the storm won't affect you at all. I'm going to close it with this. I know that sometimes the information that you process, especially all of us when we hear someone, allow yourself the gift of processing. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to reject it. Be in your own truth. What resonates for you? That's the gift that I take out of don't take anything personally, including everything that I just said. And I mean that. Take it to your heart and decide for yourself. And don't take anything